If you think your blood type is just a random letter on a medical chart, something that only matters during a blood transfusion or an emergency surgery, I need you to sit down and listen carefully. Because what I am about to tell you could fundamentally change the way you think about your health, your disease risk, and even how many years you have left on this earth. Your blood type, whether it is AB, or O, is not just a label. It is a biological fingerprint that influences how your blood clots, how your immune system responds to infections, how your gut processes food, and even how vulnerable you are to the diseases that kill more people than anything else on the planet: heart disease, stroke, and cancer. And the scientific evidence connecting blood type to longevity is far more robust than most people realise. Let me walk you through what the research actually shows, what your specific blood type means for your health risks, and most importantly, what you can do about it. Because understanding your blood type gives you a powerful tool to take targeted, preventive action. The story begins with the ABO blood group system, discovered in 1901 by Karl Landsteiner, who won the Nobel Prize for this work. Your blood type is determined by the presence or absence of specific sugar molecules, called antigens, on the surface of your red blood cells. Type A blood has A antigens, type B has B antigens, type AB has both, and type O has neither. These antigens are not just passive markers, they actively interact with your immune system, your clotting factors, and even the bacteria in your gut. They are biologically active molecules with far-reaching effects throughout your entire body. Let me start with type O, because this is the blood type that consistently shows the most favourable longevity profile in large-scale studies. People with type O blood have a significantly lower risk of cardiovascular disease compared to all other blood types. A massive meta-analysis published in the European Heart Journal that examined data from over 1.3 million people found that individuals with non-O blood types had a 9 to 18% higher risk of major cardiovascular events compared to type O individuals. That is not a small difference. Over the course of a lifetime, that elevated risk translates into thousands of additional heart attacks and strokes. The reason for this advantage lies in the clotting system. People with type O blood have naturally lower levels of von Willebrand factor and factor VIII, two proteins that are essential for blood clot formation. While this means type O individuals may bleed slightly more during surgery or after an injury, it also means their blood is less prone to forming the dangerous internal clots that cause heart attacks, strokes, deep vein thrombosis, and pulmonary embolism. Their blood flows more freely through their arteries, and the risk of a clot suddenly blocking a critical vessel is meaningfully reduced. Type O individuals also appear to have lower levels of LDL cholesterol on average, and some studies suggest they have lower rates of certain inflammatory markers that contribute to atherosclerosis, the progressive buildup of plaque inside arteries that is the underlying cause of most cardiovascular disease. This combination of less clotting, lower cholesterol, and reduced inflammation creates a cardiovascular environment that is genuinely protective. Now let me turn to type A blood, because this is where the news becomes more concerning. Type A is the blood type most consistently associated with elevated cardiovascular risk. The same meta-analysis I mentioned found that type A individuals had approximately a 20% higher risk of developing coronary heart disease compared to type O. Research from Harvard Medical School has shown that type A blood is associated with higher levels of total cholesterol and LDL cholesterol, both of which accelerate atherosclerosis. But cardiovascular disease is not the only concern for type A individuals. There is a growing body of evidence linking type A blood to elevated cancer risk, particularly stomach cancer. A landmark study published in the Journal of the National Cancer Institute found that people with type A blood had a 20% higher risk of gastric cancer compared to type O. The proposed mechanism involves Helicobacter pylori, the bacterium that causes stomach ulcers, and is a major risk factor for stomach cancer. H. pylori appears to interact differently with the A antigen on gastric cells, creating a more hospitable environment for chronic infection and the inflammatory changes that precede cancer. Type A individuals also show higher rates of pancreatic cancer in several large epidemiological studies. A study from the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute found that people with type A blood had a 32% higher risk of pancreatic cancer compared to type O individuals. Type B blood carries its own set of risks, although the overall risk profile is more moderate than type A. Poitinete. People with type B blood have been found to have higher rates of type 2 diabetes in some population studies. Research published in Diabetologia found that type B individuals had a 21% higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes compared to type O. The mechanism may involve differences in gut bacteria composition. The B antigen appears to favour certain bacterial species that influence insulin sensitivity and glucose metabolism. Type B blood has also been associated with higher rates of ovarian cancer in women and certain autoimmune conditions. However, type B individuals appear to have a somewhat lower cardiovascular risk than type A, placing them in an intermediate position between the favourable type O and the higher risk type A. Type AB blood is the rarest blood type, found in only about 4 to 5% of the population, and it carries the highest cardiovascular risk of all. A study from Harvard School of Public Health found that type AB individuals had a 23% higher risk of coronary heart disease compared to type O. Another study published in Neurology found that people with type AB blood had a 30% higher risk of stroke. Type AB combines the elevated clotting factors associated with non-O blood types with unique immunological characteristics that may further promote vascular inflammation. Type AB individuals also show elevated rates of cognitive decline and dementia in some studies. Research from the University of Vermont found that people with type AB blood had an 82% higher risk of developing cognitive impairment compared to type O individuals. While this is a single study and more research is needed, the finding is biologically plausible, given the vascular connections. Impaired blood flow to the brain is a major contributor to cognitive decline, and type AB blood's prothrombotic tendency could contribute to silent cerebrovascular damage over decades. Now, before anyone with type AB or AB blood panics, I need to emphasize something critically important. Your blood type is one factor among many. It is not destiny. The overwhelming majority of your longevity is determined by modifiable factors: diet, exercise, smoking, alcohol consumption, stress management, sleep quality, and preventive medical care. Blood type contributes a relatively modest amount to your overall risk profile. Think of it as the terrain you're working with, not the destination. And this is where understanding your blood type becomes genuinely empowering rather than frightening. If you know your specific vulnerabilities, you can take targeted action. If you have type A blood and know you carry elevated cardiovascular and cancer risk, you can be more aggressive about cholesterol management. Get your lipid panel checked regularly. Focus on a heart-healthy diet, rich in omega-3 fatty acids, fiber, fruits and vegetables. Exercise regularly. Even moderate exercise like brisk walking for 30 minutes a day dramatically reduces cardiovascular risk, regardless of blood type. Talk to your doctor about whether a low-dose aspirin regimen is appropriate. Get screened for H. pylori infection, especially if you have digestive symptoms, since treating this infection can reduce your stomach cancer risk. If you have type B blood and carry elevated diabetes risk, prioritize metabolic health. Monitor your fasting blood glucose and hemoglobin, A1C levels. Maintain a healthy weight, because excess body fat, especially visceral fat around the organs, dramatically increases insulin resistance. Limit refined carbohydrates and added sugars. Incorporate resistance training into your exercise routine, because muscle mass is one of the most powerful regulators of glucose metabolism. If you have type AB blood and carry the highest cardiovascular risk, take every heart protective measure seriously. Do not smoke. Control your blood pressure aggressively. Manage your cholesterol. Stay physically active. Consider discussing with your doctor whether more frequent cardiovascular screening, such as coronary calcium scoring or carotid ultrasound, is appropriate given your elevated baseline risk. And if you have type O blood, do not become complacent. Your blood type confers some natural protection, but it does not make you invincible. Type O individuals still develop heart disease, cancer, and diabetes, especially if they smoke, eat poorly, remain sedentary, or neglect preventive care. Your favourable blood type gives you a head start, not a guaranteed finish. There is another fascinating dimension to the blood type and longevity connection that deserves mention: the gut microbiome. Research has shown that blood type antigens are not found only on red blood cells. They are also expressed on the cells lining your digestive tract. These antigens serve as attachment sites and food sources for specific bacterial species, which means your blood type partially shapes the composition of your gut microbiome. Since we now know that the gut microbiome influences everything from immune function to inflammation to mental health, this represents another pathway through which blood type can affect overall health and longevity. Studies have found that type O individuals tend to have higher levels of certain beneficial bifidobacterium species, while type A individuals have a gut microbiome profile that may promote slightly higher levels of systemic inflammation. This microbiome connection may help explain some of the disease associations that epidemiological studies have identified. I also want to address the blood type diet, which gained popularity through the book Eat Right for Your Type. The premise is that people should eat specific foods based on their blood type. While the concept is appealing, rigorous scientific studies, including a large study from the University of Toronto published in PLOS1, have found no evidence that following a blood type specific diet improves health outcomes beyond what any healthy diet would achieve. The diets themselves are generally healthy, which is why some people feel better following them, but the benefit comes from eating well, not from matching food to blood type. I mention this because I do not want misinformation to distract from the genuine, evidence-based connections between blood type and health. The Rh factor, the positive or negative designation, also deserves brief discussion. While the ABO blood group has the strongest associations with disease risk, some research suggests that Rh negative individuals may have slightly different immune responses. However, the evidence is much less robust than for the ABO system, and the clinical significance is less clear. For longevity purposes, the ABO type is the most important factor. Let me close with a practical summary. Your blood type is a piece of your biological puzzle that you should know and understand, just like your family history, your cholesterol levels, and your blood pressure. It does not determine your fate, but it reveals your terrain. Armed with that knowledge, you can make smarter decisions about screening, prevention, and lifestyle. If you do not know your blood type, ask your doctor to include it in your next blood test. It is a simple, inexpensive test that gives you information you will carry for the rest of your life. I want to leave you with one final thought that I find deeply reassuring. The longest-lived populations in the world, the so-called blue zones in places like Okinawa, Sardinia, and Loma Linda, include people of every blood type. What unites them is not their genetics, but their habits. Whole food diets, daily physical activity, strong social connections, a sense of purpose, and low levels of chronic stress. These factors overwhelm any blood type advantage or disadvantage. The message is clear. Your lifestyle is the most powerful longevity tool you possess, regardless of the letters on your blood type card. If this information was valuable to you, please share it with your family and friends. Everyone deserves to understand how their body works and what they can do to protect their health as they age. Subscribe to this channel for more evidence-based health content, and leave me a comment telling me your blood type and what health topic you would like me to cover next. I read every single comment, and your questions help me create content that truly matters. Take care of yourselves. Knowledge really is the best medicine. I want to explore one more fascinating area of blood type research that has emerged in recent years: the connection between blood type and infectious disease susceptibility. During the COVID-19 pandemic, multiple large-scale studies found that people with type O blood had a modestly lower risk of contracting SARS-CoV-2 and a lower risk of severe outcomes compared to people with other blood types. A study published in the New England Journal of Medicine identified 2 genetic loci associated with respiratory failure from COVID-19, one of which was the ABO blood group locus. While the differences were not dramatic, they added to a growing body of evidence that blood type influences susceptibility to a range of infectious diseases, including malaria, norovirus, and cholera. The malaria connection is particularly striking, and may even explain why different blood types evolved in the first place. Plasmodium falciparum, the most deadly malaria parasite, uses a protein called RIFIN to bind to red blood cells. Research published in Nature Medicine showed that RIFIN binds preferentially to type A red blood cells, creating larger, stickier clumps of infected cells that are more likely to clog small blood vessels, which is the mechanism that makes malaria so lethal. Type O red blood cells, which lack the A and B antigens, are less susceptible to this binding. In malaria-endemic regions of Africa, type O blood is significantly more prevalent, suggesting that natural selection favoured type O in populations where malaria pressure was highest. This evolutionary perspective helps explain the global distribution of blood types. Type A is most common in Europe and parts of Asia. Type B is most prevalent in Central Asia and India, and type O is dominant in South America and sub-Saharan Africa. These distributions reflect thousands of years of natural selection pressure from regional infectious diseases, and they remind us that our blood type is not random. It is a product of our ancestors' survival against specific threats. Another area gaining research attention is the relationship between blood type and the aging process itself. Telomeres, the protective caps on the ends of chromosomes that shorten with each cell division and serve as a biological clock of aging, have been studied in relation to blood type. Some preliminary research suggests that type O individuals may maintain slightly longer telomeres on average, although this finding is not yet conclusive and more studies are needed. If confirmed, it would provide a direct cellular mechanism linking blood type to the pace of biological aging. I should also discuss the practical question of blood type and medication response. There is emerging evidence that blood type may influence how certain medications are metabolized and how effectively they work. For example, some research suggests that patients with different blood types may respond differently to antiplatelet medications like clopidogrel, which is commonly prescribed after heart attacks and stent procedures. This area of pharmacogenomics, tailoring medications based on genetic factors, including blood type, is still in its early stages, but it represents an exciting frontier in personalized medicine. For anyone who has children or grandchildren, sharing blood type awareness early can set them on a path of lifelong health consciousness. Knowing that a child carries type A blood, for example, can motivate parents to establish heart-healthy eating habits, regular physical activity, and appropriate medical screening schedules from an early age. Prevention is always more powerful than treatment, and the earlier it begins, the greater the cumulative benefit over a lifetime. One more point that I believe is worth emphasizing. Blood type research is not about creating anxiety or fatalism. It is about empowerment through knowledge. The vast majority of centenarians, people who live to be 100 or older, are not exclusively type O. They include every blood type. What distinguishes them is not their blood, but their habits, their resilience, their social connections, and their attitudes toward life. Your blood type is one thread in a vast tapestry of factors that determine your health and longevity. Understanding that thread gives you one more tool to weave a longer, healthier life. Let me address another practical question that many patients ask. Does blood type affect how well certain diets work for weight loss? While the blood type diet I mentioned earlier does not have scientific support for blood type specific food lists, there is intriguing preliminary evidence that people with different blood types may respond differently to high-fat versus high-carbohydrate diets in terms of cholesterol changes and inflammatory markers. A study from the University of Helsinki observed that type A individuals showed greater reductions in LDL cholesterol on plant-based diets compared to type O individuals who tended to show better metabolic responses to diets containing moderate amounts of lean animal protein. These findings are preliminary and should not be used to make rigid dietary choices, but they suggest that personalized nutrition based partly on genetic factors, including blood type, may become a more refined science in the coming decades. There is also growing interest in the connection between blood type and autoimmune disease. Type O individuals appear to have higher rates of certain autoimmune conditions, including Hashimoto thyroiditis and type 1 diabetes, while type A individuals show higher rates of pernicious anemia, an autoimmune condition affecting vitamin B12 absorption. These associations are thought to arise from differences in how the immune system recognizes self versus foreign antigens based on the ABO sugar molecules present on cell surfaces. Understanding these connections can help doctors recommend appropriate screening. For example, monitoring thyroid function more closely in type O patients with family histories of thyroid disease. I want to share one more piece of data that I find particularly powerful. A study published in BMC Medicine that followed over 50,000 people for more than 7 years found that after adjusting for all known cardiovascular risk factors, age, sex, smoking, diabetes, cholesterol, blood pressure, body mass index, and physical activity, blood type remained an independent predictor of cardiovascular mortality. Type O individuals had the lowest risk, type A, and type B had intermediate risk, and type AB had the highest risk. The fact that blood type predicts outcomes even after accounting for all these other factors confirms that it has genuinely independent biological effects on cardiovascular health.